Hi.
Hey, let's talk today about Studio Pilates and our vision for the brand and, how we came about to franchise.
Yeah, okay. One of my favorite subjects. Yeah, let's talk about our vision first of all. So, the vision for the business is what we call our million people plan. So, the million people plan is to see 1 million people per week changing their lives through the Studio Pilates workout experience by 2035. In order to do that, we need around about 2,000 studios. Of course, that is the reason why we are international as well. So, we originated and started in Australia. However, 2,000 studios in Australia, probably not super feasible. And so that's why we needed to, expand those horizons, and we're operating in multiple countries. So that's ultimately what drives the franchise, I guess, as a vehicle to fulfill that vision and franchising. And look, we are very passionate, like I'm very passionate about franchising and seeing the support for the franchisees, our franchisees, to be able to help them to operate a highly successful business. And, we had what I guess a lot of people aren't aware of is we had one single location, for a decade before we even franchised, and so that is, it's not super common knowledge, but that's how we started out. And we had that one studio and made all the mistakes, created all of the training systems and programs, created all the operational systems and programs as well, and did all the things incorrectly. We made all the mistakes, learned all the lessons, and those are the things that were essentially bottled. All of the things that do work, and we educate our franchisees on doing those best practices, those things that we know work, because we did it. We've both taught, instructed 50,000 classes. We've seen a lot of people, over that time. We've taken a lot of telephone calls. We've refined all of those processes, systems, programs, all of those things. And, I'm extremely passionate about teaching others to how to run a successful Pilates studio, a successful business, because A, love Pilates, and B, we want to see that, spread across those countries that we're in, to bring it to more neighborhoods and to change our customers' lives in those neighborhoods. And, and we need our franchise partners to be well equipped to be able to do that and exercise that in their local area.
Absolutely. And I think that is the benefit of buying into a franchise is that, systems have been developed and, I guess there's varying levels of support and systems that you do get with different franchises.
Yeah.
We've always operated on all levels. We've got teams of people whose sole job is to work out how to help the franchisees more in each realm, whether it's HR practices, whether it's accounting and finance practices, whether it's, team management, instructing, marketing, sales, just, I guess, front of house and, just day-to-day tasks. So I guess, we spent years and years writing all of the systems and they're continually being refined. And we also spend, every year we've got teams of people working out how we can better equip our franchisees, give them more support, give them more training to enable them to have the easiest path forward and, not make all the mistakes that we would have made, when we first started out, and to have them be really successful. And I think one thing that's interesting is, that's always been our mindset, is everything we do is to try to help the franchisees be better and do better. Is, we've got franchisees that have come in from other franchise networks who've owned other franchise, whether it be a fitness business or a different type of business. And across the board, generally, the comments we get are we do provide a lot more support than what people are used to getting in other franchise systems. And I think if you're going to bother buying into a franchise system, that's really what you're buying, is all of the know-how, all of the support, all of the systems, and just having that backup of people who've been there, done that for many, many years successfully, and you do hear some horror stories of people buying into, other franchise networks. We hear more about the fitness space where they're kind of really left to their own devices with not a lot of help. So that's something that, is our ultimate goal really, And, we want every studio to be as successful as possible for the owners, but also run as well as possible for the client experience, because that's what it all comes back to. Having those, million clients doing the workouts, but the workouts need to be great. It needs to be the same experience across the board, whether it's the person answering the phone, all the way to the instructing, all the way to how the staff are treated. Systems are super essential, and support very essential as well. So, that's an ever evolving space, and never resting on our laurels with that. Any feedback from franchisees, keeping an eye on the mistakes that people are making, what people need more training on. And as you know, each department all year, that's all we do is try and
Absolutely.
work out better ways to, I guess, convey and help our franchisees provide the best experience for the customers.
Yeah, and ultimately, you mentioned consistency there. That consistency is of the customer experience. That is how a brand, a chain, is ultimately built. It's brick by brick, person by person, studio by studio, experience by experience, and having that uniform, having that as the highest possible standard and quality is very, very important. That is our collective reputation, and that is what we focus on. From our global support office, identifying, as you mentioned, training opportunities, helping, whether it's our instructors, our teams, our franchisees, know the best way to do things, the tried and true tested method, and sharing that with them, educating them on that. That's something that is a big passion of mine, simply because we never had that when we started out.
No.
A decade of, fumbling around the
Yeah.
dark, looking for the light switch, trying to figure it out. I would have saved so much money, time, and heartache and energy,
So
had we
much
known. Oh
stress.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Having to be able to open a playbook and read what to do in this situation, having someone to be able to call and, and ask advice, someone who's been there and done that. So, that didn't really exist when we first started, starting back in 2002. There were no Pilates franchises back then,
No.
and so ultimately was a pathway of just literally trying to figure stuff out, and experimenting. And, some things worked, some things didn't. We kept the things that worked.
Yeah. And I think too, no matter what business people open, everyone comes in from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
So, we came from more being instructors, and a lot of people that will open a studio, Pilates studio, may have been instructors firsthand, may never have managed teams, may never have done marketing, never have done sales, never have done team management. Other people might come in having run teams in a corporate setting, but they've never done the other things. So, everyone needs to learn all of it if you're going to run a business.
Yeah.
And, if you get the playbook from the get-go and the support from the get-go, it's a billion times easier than trying to fumble through the dark, as you said, and work it out yourself through trial and error,
But there is, I guess, so many elements to being a small business owner. You have to wear so many hats.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, whether it's recruiting, whether it's HR, whether it's managing people, whether it's inspiring people, whether it's quality assurance, making sure the instructing quality is great, whether it's coaching, leading them, whether it's, sales, marketing, lead acquisition. These are all things that are, elements of a business. But then, a hallmark of a great franchisor is to provide training on those, some know-how and knowledge on each one of those many hats that a business owner, needs to wear.
Yeah.
And look, there's a lot of franchise systems out there that don't have that element. They don't have that level of detail, and we're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
We're obsessed with it, and I think it's a very healthy obsession, because it gives our franchisees the tools that they need in order to succeed and win in business. And ultimately, we want to see our franchisees win.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And, not providing those tools and support is just not equipping people to be set up for their best chance of success. And also, you end up, I guess having, studios and classes running out there that are also not up to standard, with the brand reputation as well. So it's something we put as the highest priority, and always will continue to do so. I
Yeah.
agree, super important.
And like you said, people come from all different backgrounds, and we appreciate that and acknowledge that. That's what makes us all unique. And, like I said, not everybody has experience in managing and leading teams. And we recognize that early. And so
Mm.
therefore we create a training program around that. Not everyone comes from an instructing background. Actually, it's only a very small percentage
Yeah.
of our franchisees that come from an instructing background. And so, that instructing piece is critical, making it easy and making it simple for people to understand and pick up and get and understand. I think that's one of the amazing things that the Studio Pilates organization does, and one of the incredible things that you do as well, is making complex things simple. And I think that has resonated through the entire company. Simplifying things, making things simple and easy to understand, because through that simplicity, through that ease of understanding, it gets execution. It gets things like consistency in our workout experience. It gets things, seamless and organized throughout the entire organization, because, that everyone comes from a different background, and we respect that and honor that.
Yeah, and even to the point of, having the coaches that we have for each of our franchisees as well, the back end systems and the metrics, it's their job also to identify where different franchisees might need more assistance and coaching with training. Some people might be strong in certain aspects and not in others, and it becomes really clear as to how we can best help them. So the ongoing coaching program is really important too, not just the initial setup.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like I said, the empowering our franchisees with the knowledge they need to be able to win, that ultimately gives them confidence to be able to succeed, and, benefits them during their time with us and beyond. So I think that is that inspires me, to make it better each and every day, and I've been, doing, this Studio Pilates thing now for 23 years more, and each and every day,
I think it's a little more than that now.
could be more.
Yeah.
And so 24 years. 24 years. It's still each and every day I'm motivated, highly motivated to help our franchisees to just, improve by that 1%, that 1% better.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important part of, that evolution of the organization, evolution of the company.
Yeah. Things are ever evolving and ever improving is our motto, and to help everyone as much as possible. But yeah, thanks for that, Jade. That's some good insights there.
You're welcome.